Gentlemen, have you ever wondered what real betrayal feels like? It isn't just hearing a confession. It's looking into her eyes, kissing her lips, and not realizing she's already given herself to someone else. That's a pain most men will do anything to avoid. But the truth is, it doesn't happen overnight. The signs are always there. You just have to know how to see them. In today's lecture, I'm pulling back the curtain on the 8 silent signals that reveal when a woman has crossed that line. Most men miss them until it's too late. But not you, not after today. If you've ever felt a distance you couldn't explain or sensed a shift you couldn't put into words, listen up. This might be the wake-up call that saves your dignity and your heart. Gentlemen, let's get real. The first sign, the one that slips past most men, the one that breaks hearts in silence, is the coldness of her body. You know what I'm talking about. It's not the words she uses. It's the energy, the connection that used to be there every time you touched her, every time you pulled her close. It's the fire that once sparked at a simple kiss, a gentle hand on her back, a glance across the room that spoke a language only the two of you understood. But now that fire feels like it's gone out. You reach for her, and she turns ever so slightly away. You brush her arm in bed, and instead of softening, she stiffens. Maybe she tells you she's tired, maybe she blames work or stress or just says she needs space. And you want to believe her because it's easier to believe in stress than it is to face the ache of distance growing between you. But here's the hard truth. When a woman's been satisfied by someone else, she doesn't come back to you hungry. She comes back full, and there's simply no room for you. The touch that used to say, "I need you," is replaced with indifference. Her kiss no longer lingers. You can sense it in the way her body no longer reaches for yours. That's not routine, and it's not just age. Attraction doesn't die because years go by, it dies when the source of that fire moves elsewhere. Most men make the mistake of denial. They tell themselves it's just a rough patch, just a phase. They blame the job, the kids, the pressure of life. But if you're honest, you know the difference between a woman who is tired and a woman who is simply not there for you anymore. Tiredness recovers with rest, indifference settles in and stays. You're left trying to ignite a fire that has already burned itself out. So what do? You don't chase harder. You don't beg for attention. You pull back and you observe. Give her space not as a punishment but as a test. If she still desires you, she'll feel that distance and move toward you. If her interest is gone, that silence will only grow deeper. Your job isn't to force her to respond. It's to recognize when the natural response has vanished. It hurts, I know, but facing the truth is the only way to stop betraying yourself. If her body goes silent, that's not just a phase. That's a signal. The sooner you accept it, the sooner you reclaim your self-respect. And trust me, the body never lies. If the warmth is gone, it's time to start paying attention, because other signs are sure to follow. Let's move to the second sign, a signal that's almost always overlooked, yet it speaks louder than words, if you know what to look for. I call it the cleansing ritual. And gentlemen, this isn't about basic hygiene. This is about sudden changes, subtle habits, and a level of freshness that feels strangely out of place. Picture this. She walks through the door, and she smells different, not just clean, but extra clean. Maybe there's a new perfume that you've never noticed before. Or maybe she heads straight to the shower the moment she gets home, scrubbing longer than usual, with a kind of urgency that wasn't there before. You find her clothes, changed underwear, swapped laundry, guarded like state secrets. On the surface, it looks like self-care. But deep down, it's an attempt to erase evidence. Evidence not just from her body, but from her conscience. Here's why this matters. Women know their bodies tell stories. Skin holds on to scents. Hair remembers touch clothes, carry traces of where they've been and who they've been with. When guilt creeps in, she doesn't just wash off sweat, she's trying to wash away any hint of betrayal. The longer showers, the new fragrances, the obsessive attention to fresh clothes, they're not random acts. They're patterns. And the more she tries to erase, the more obvious the pattern becomes. Now let's be clear, every shower isn't a red flag. But what you're looking for is change. If she never cared about jumping in the shower right after work before, but now it's a strict routine, pay attention. If her laundry becomes private, if she suddenly needs her space to freshen up every time she comes home late, don't dismiss it as a quirk. Patterns reveal what words won't say. Here's where most men slip: they gaslight themselves. They tell themselves, she just likes to feel fresh, or she's probably trying out a new scent. You rationalize it because the alternative hurts too much to consider. But that's how you become a quiet accomplice in your own replacement. Your nose picks up the new perfume, but your mind turns it into something harmless. Your gut senses the shift, but your heart wants to believe everything is fine. So what should you do when you notice this ritual? You don't confront with anger. You don't accuse or interrogate. Instead, you acknowledge the pattern with clarity. Observe, connect the dots, and see the behavior for what it is. The truth is, the more she tries to cleanse, the louder her conscience is screaming. This isn't just about washing her skin, it's about trying to wash away what happened before she walked through your door. And here's the real kicker. Hygiene is just the surface. Beneath it, there's a deeper psychological game at play, one that doesn't wash off in the shower. When her body is clean but her conscience is heavy, you'll see it spill out sideways. That's where the third sign begins to show. Let's talk about a shift that hits below the surface, one that most men never see coming until it's already torn their confidence apart. This is the third sign: the blame game, and her sudden, unjustified irritation with you. And trust me, when this pattern appears, it isn't just about a bad mood. It's a classic sign that something deeper is at play. See, when a woman crosses a line she knows she shouldn't have, she doesn't always confess. Guilt is a heavy burden, and most people, men and women alike, are wired to try to get rid of it. But here's where psychology gets twisted. Instead of dealing with her own conscience, she transfers that guilt onto you. Suddenly you walk in the door and the smallest things become reasons for her to snap. Maybe you left a mug in the sink, or you didn't text back fast enough. You used to laugh those things off together. Now they're ammunition. This isn't random. It's a psychological defense mechanism called projection. She projects her guilt outward, painting you as inattentive, insensitive, or even controlling. In her mind, if you're the villain, she doesn't have to feel like the betrayer. She might even convince herself, I only did what I did because he never listens, or he's the reason I needed something else. The more she blames you, the easier it is for her to justify her actions to herself. And here's the trap: most men, when faced with this barrage of criticism, try to defend themselves. You start explaining, apologizing, even trying to fix things you didn't break. You want to restore peace, so you play right into the script she's writing her as the victim, you as the problem. But here's the truth: you cannot outlogic guilt. The more you defend, the more you confirm her new story. And before you know it, you're walking on eggshells in your own home. So what do? The answer is control, not of her, but of yourself. The next time she snaps over something trivial, don't rise to the bait. Don't beg for her approval or engage in a pointless debate. Instead, look her in the eye calmly and say, you don't need to pick a fight to justify what you've already decided. Then step back, not out of weakness, but out of strength. You're showing her you see the tactic and you refuse to play along. That one move flips the entire dynamic. When you stop playing the villain in her rewritten script, the weight of her guilt falls back on her shoulders right where it belongs. And here's what separates men who get drained from men who stand tall. Real strength isn't about arguing or fixing. It's about seeing the manipulation for what it is and holding your ground. But remember, projection is powerful, but it's not the last mask. When the blame game fails, the truth will start leaking through in other ways, most often right through her body itself. Gentlemen, let's get honest. Words can be rehearsed, stories can be polished, but the body never lies. This is the fourth sign, and it's one of the hardest to face because it's all about what you already sense, but might be too afraid to admit. You know her rhythms. You know the spark in her eyes, the warmth in her touch, the way her body responds when she's truly with you. When that suddenly changes, it's rarely random, and it's almost never without reason. Here's where most men betray themselves, not because they can't see, but because they refuse to look. Maybe she seems unusually tense, or maybe she's strangely relaxed, almost detached. Maybe intimacy becomes exaggerated too much effort, like she's performing a part. Or on the other hand, her presence fades, her energy drops, and passion feels like it's evaporated. Sometimes the shift is so subtle you can barely put your finger on it. Other times, it's like a wall, obvious, cold, and impenetrable. Let's be clear, hormone stress and exhaustion are real. But when the change is sudden, when the pattern breaks for no clear reason, you owe it to yourself to stop pretending. Because here's the cruel truth. If you ignore what your senses already know, you're not saving the relationship. You're just postponing the collapse. You can feel the difference between a woman who is tired and a woman who simply doesn't want to be there. Tiredness still allows closeness. Indifference builds a wall you can't climb. So what do most men do? They try harder. They overcompensate. More affection, more patience, more energy in the bedroom, hoping to win her back. But effort can't reignite a fire that's already been put out by someone else. All it does is drain you, leaving you empty and frustrated. You don't win desire by working harder. You win by recognizing when it's gone and respecting yourself enough to step back. Here's what to do. Stop chasing. Don't accuse. Don't interrogate. Just notice. Observe how consistent the change is. Is her new distance a pattern, not just a one-off event? That awareness is your shield. It keeps you from investing in someone who's already left you emotionally. The more you face the truth, the less you'll betray yourself. Strength isn't about denial. It's about facing what you already know, even when it hurts. The body always speaks the truth, whether we want to hear it or not. And sometimes, when the cracks get too wide, you'll notice she might go the opposite direction, showering you with affection that feels almost too good to be true. And that gentleman is a sign you can't afford to ignore. Now let's talk about one of the most deceptive signs, a sign that plays directly on your hope and your need to believe things are getting better. This is sign 5, excessive affection, the theater of guilt. Gentlemen, not every betrayal comes wrapped in coldness. Sometimes it comes wrapped in kisses and warmth, in an outpouring of attention that feels almost overwhelming. You see, after crossing a line, some women don't pull away, they actually pull closer. Suddenly, she's cooking your favorite meal, holding your hand at every opportunity, giving you more compliments, hugging you more than usual. She may even become more sexually adventurous, more available, more attentive. And for a moment, you let yourself believe maybe things are finally turning around. Maybe she's falling back in love with me. But here's the harsh truth. Most of that affection isn't about you. It's about her conscience. It's about trying to drown out the guilt that's been eating away at her since she made a choice she can't undo. This isn't genuine desire. This is damage control, a performance, a way to silence her own regret and convince herself that everything is still okay. The real cruelty here is that this sudden surge of affection usually appears after you've sensed her pulling away. You've noticed the distance, the coldness, the tension, and suddenly she floods you with warmth and attention. It's almost too good to be true, and that's exactly what it is. Because when affection comes only in waves, when it shows up after long absences or emotional cold spells, you have to ask yourself, is this real? Or is it rehearsed? Here's where most men let down their guard. You want to believe it's a second chance, so you stop observing, you stop questioning, and you start giving your trust away again. That's when you lose all leverage. You become the comfort zone, the safe place she clings to, while her passion and energy burn somewhere else. In the end, you're left holding her guilt, not her love. So what's the move? Test the source of her affection. Is it consistent, or is it always following some unexplained absence? Does she touch you with real desire? Or does it feel like obligation, like she's making up for something? Is her tenderness natural, or does it seem exaggerated, even theatrical? These questions cut through the fog of hope and force you to see the situation for what it really is. Here's the bottom line: don't reward guilty affection. Don't let her wipe her conscience on your shoulders. Real love doesn't need to overcompensate. If her hugs and kisses feel more like an apology than genuine connection, you already know what's happening. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is say, "I'd rather have honesty than a performance." Because once you stop accepting affection born from guilt, you reclaim your self-respect and you make room for the truth to surface. But remember, when affection becomes theater, the next act is almost always emotional absence. And that, gentlemen, is a pain you can't fake your way through. Now let's dig into one of the most devastating signs, a sign that doesn't just affect your relationship, but cuts deep into your self-worth as a man. This is sign 6, emotional absence in intimacy. And if you've ever laid next to someone who's there in body but gone in spirit, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Picture this: you're in bed together. The lights are low, the world is quiet, and everything looks normal on the outside. She touches you, she moves, she even says the right things. But the truth is, it all feels strangely empty. There's no spark, no real energy connecting you. Her eyes are distant, her touch is mechanical, and her presence feels like it's miles away even as she's right next to you. This is the stage where betrayal cuts the deepest. Why? Because she's giving you her body, but she's withholding herself. You're not making love, you're playing a role in her cover-up. And most men, desperate to fix what's missing, try to compensate. You give more affection, more patience, more effort, hoping that if you just love her hard enough, she'll return to you. But what happens? The more you try, the more she slips away, because her passion isn't missing, it's burning for someone else. It's a brutal realization. But here's the truth. Tiredness, stress, or even a bad day never completely erase connection. They might dampen it for a moment, but the bond comes back. Emotional absence, though, is a void that grows bigger the harder you chase it. The more you push, the more you teach her that she doesn't have to give anything back. She can just go through the motions and you'll still be there. So what do? When you sense this void? You stop chasing ghosts. Respect yourself enough to recognize when her soul isn't with you anymore. Don't cover it up with more effort, more patience, or more excuses. Instead, pause and get honest with yourself. Look at her, not for signs of desire, but for signs of emptiness. Ask yourself, am I here because I'm loved, or because I'm too afraid to let go? Here's your move. Say, less. Observe more. And stop confusing physical presence with emotional connection. When you feel her spirit has left, it's not your job to drag it back. It's your job to decide if you're willing to settle for a shell of what you once had. That clarity is painful, but it's also liberating. It's the first step in regaining your power and your dignity. And gentlemen, when the bed gets colder every night, don't be surprised when she starts spending more time outside the home, finding more reasons to be somewhere else. Because after emotional absence comes the next undeniable sign: late returns and empty excuses. Now let's turn the spotlight on a sign that creeps into your life so gradually you might not notice it until it's become the new normal. This is sign 7, late returns and empty excuses. If you've ever caught yourself checking the clock, wondering why she's late again, or listening to yet another story that just doesn't add up, you're not alone. This is one of the classic red flags that love and loyalty are fading fast. When a woman's passion for you is real, she finds her way home. Even on her busiest days, she makes you her priority. But when her heart shifts suddenly, time itself becomes your enemy. She's late more often, and every excuse feels thinner than the last. Work ran late. Her phone died. A friend needed her help. At first, you want to believe her. You convince yourself that life is just messy, unpredictable. But when messy becomes a routine, when lateness becomes habit, that's not about life. It's about you no longer being first in her world. What's really happening? It's not just about losing track of time. It's a subtle test. She's measuring how much you'll tolerate. She wants to see if you'll call her out or if you'll just swallow your disappointment and accept less while hoping for more. Every time you let it slide, every time you bite your tongue and pretend not to care, you're training her, teaching her that your boundaries are negotiable and your dignity is up for grabs. And here's where many men trip up. They choose silence. You see the inconsistencies, you feel the sting, but you're afraid to look insecure, so you don't say a word. But let me be clear, insecurity isn't speaking up for yourself. Insecurity is pretending you don't notice, sacrificing your self-respect for the illusion of peace. So what's the move? Call it what it is, not with anger, not with desperate questioning, but with calm, unshakable boundaries. The next time she comes home late with another shaky story, look her in the eye and say, "You weren't here, and that tells me everything I need to know." Then let the silence sit. That silence is more powerful than any argument because it puts the responsibility for her choices squarely back on her. Track the pattern, not the excuse. Don't waste energy dissecting the details of every story. Instead, pay attention to frequency, to her tone, and most importantly, to how your gut reacts. Patterns tell the truth, even when words don't. Remember, a woman who still chooses you will always come home, even if she's late every now and then. But when she stops coming home, it's because she's already returning to someone or somewhere else. And here's the harshest reality: even if she tries to cover her tracks, her words will eventually betray her. When her story finally starts to unravel, the truth you've been avoiding will be impossible to ignore. At first, her explanations for late nights or strange behavior might sound believable. Maybe it's a work crisis. Maybe it's a friend in need. Maybe it's just a little me time. But over time, those stories become too complicated to hold together. Details shift. Timelines change. One day, she says she was with a coworker. The next, it was an errand. You start to notice the gaps. The little mistakes, the nervous flicker in her eyes when you ask a simple question. Her body language becomes her loudest confession. She won't hold your gaze for long. Her tone is uneven sometimes, too defensive, sometimes too casual, never quite matching the words. And it's not just about what she says, it's about what she doesn't say. Silence falls where there used to be laughter and easy conversation. You sense her dodging your questions, rushing to change the subject, or getting annoyed when you want basic clarity. Here's the mistake most men make: they wait for a smoking gun. They want proof, something undeniable, before they're willing to act. But the truth rarely comes as a neatly packaged confession. More often, it shows up in the mess, through contradictions, nervous gestures, and the unraveling of her narrative. The more you listen, the more you realize her story simply doesn't add up. So what should you do when you see her story start to collapse? Stop playing detective. You don't need to interrogate or collect evidence for a trial. You already have what matters: your intuition, the patterns, the shifts, and the countless little inconsistencies. When her story wobbles, let it. Don't rush in to rescue her from her own contradictions. Let the silence work for you. Most importantly, draw your line. Say to yourself, "I don't believe you and I don't need to anymore." That's not an accusation. That's a boundary. When you stop demanding explanations, you reclaim your power. You stop being the man begging for clarity from someone who thrives on confusion, and you become the man who decides what he will and won't accept. Remember, gentlemen, when her story collapses, the only real question left isn't about her betrayal. It's about whether you'll betray yourself by ignoring the truth. Because the harshest betrayal isn't what happens in secret. It's what you let yourself ignore in plain sight. And as you face this truth, you stand at a crossroads. Will you choose your dignity, or will you choose denial? The answer defines not just this moment, but every moment going forward. Gentlemen, let's bring this home. You've just heard the 8 signs: the subtle shifts, the sudden rituals, the blame, the emotional distance, the empty stories that too many men ignore until it's too late. And the lesson isn't paranoia or chasing shadows. It's about self-respect. It's about refusing to betray yourself by explaining away what your gut already knows. Remember, not every sign guarantees betrayal, but when the patterns add up, when her energy, her stories, her body, and her behavior all shift, you owe it to yourself to stop making excuses. Your job isn't to accuse or interrogate. It's to observe, set clear boundaries, and protect your dignity. If there's something left to fix it together with honesty. But if every sign points to a truth, you can't deny the bravest move is to walk away with your self-respect intact. The harshest betrayal isn't what she does in secret. It's what you allow yourself to ignore in plain sight. So today, I challenge you. Pick one area in your life where you've ignored your instincts and face it head on. Decide whether it's a problem you can solve or the end of the line. Drop your story in the comments. What sign hit home for you? Where are you listening from? And don't forget to subscribe for more hard truths and real strategies on female psychology. Because you deserve a love that never asks you to abandon yourself.